Hi everybody! Tonight's video is on finding equivalent forms of rational numbers, and this fits with the learning goal. I can find equivalent fractions and decimals. So you might be asking yourself when you look at this title of this video, what the heck is a rational number? And a rational number is just a fancy name for a number that can be written in the form of a over b, where a is an integer and b is any non-zero integer. Well, I hope that cleared everything up. We're going to put that in even simpler terms. A rational number is a number that can be written as a division problem or as a fraction, where the top and the bottom numbers are both integers, meaning that they don't have any fraction or decimal part, and they can be either positive or negative, but the bottom number can't be zero. Because it turns out you're not allowed to divide by zero in math, ever. So the bottom number, that b, cannot ever be zero. We have two methods of simplifying fractions that we're going to go over in this lesson. And the first one is to use the greatest common factor when we simplify a fraction. So if I look at this fraction right here, 36/40ths, I want to think about, well, how can I simplify that? And if I use the greatest common factor, I can do that in one step. To do that, I'm going to ask myself, what are the factors of 36 and what are the factors of 40? I could go ahead and list all of those out and then find the biggest one. So I look at those two groups of factors and I'm looking for the greatest common factor. So the largest factor that those two numbers share, just like you learned in the last video. They both share 1, they both share 2, they share 4, and that's it. So the largest common factor that they share would be 4. I'm now going to use that greatest common factor, and I'm going to divide both the numerator, the top number, and the denominator, the bottom number, by 4. When I want to find an equivalent fraction, I need to do the same thing to both the top and bottom. So I'm going to divide both of those numbers by 4. 36 divided by 4 is 9, and 40 divided by 4 is 10. And I can see by looking at that there are no factors that 9 and 10 share other than 1. So that means that 9/10 is in lowest terms. So I've used the greatest common factor to put that in to put 36/40ths in lowest terms. There's another way that I can do this, and that is to use prime factorization. 9 is divisible by 3 and 3. So now I have 2, 3, 3, 3, and those are all prime. So that would be the prime factorization of 54. And I'm going to see if I can make all this fit. So I'm going to squeeze in my factor tree for 60. And I like to start with 2 again because 60 is an even number, so I can see that it's divisible. And 2 goes into 60 30 times. And I'm just going to keep dividing by 2 as long as I have an even number. So that would go in 15 times. And then if I look at 15, it's not an even number anymore. So it's not divisible by 2. I can divide 15 by 3 and 5, and those are both prime. So now I have the prime factorization of 60, 2, 2, 3, 5. So I'm going to rewrite this fraction using the prime factorizations. So I'm going to write this as 2 times 3 times 3 times 3 all over 2 times 2 times 3 times 5. And now I'm just going to cross off or cancel the factors that they have in common. So I see there's a 2 on top and a 2 on the bottom. I can get rid of that. I see there is also a 3 on top and a 3 on the bottom. So I can get rid of those. And now that I'm looking, there are no other factors that are in the numerator and in the denominator. So I'm done canceling, and I just need to multiply my prime factors back together to get my fraction in lowest terms. So 3 times 3 gives me 9, and 2 times 5 gives me 10. So I can see that this fraction also simplifies to 9/10, which means that actually 54/60ths and 36/40ths are equivalent fractions. They both reduce to the same thing, so they turn out to be equivalent fractions. So how do you write a fraction as a decimal? The simplest way to do that is to remember that the fraction bar is another symbol for division, and it tells you to divide. So how do I write a fraction as a decimal? I'm going to divide the numerator, or the top number, by the denominator, the bottom number. And we'll show you what that looks like, or I'll show you what that looks like on the next slide. But for now, just keep that in mind. You're going to divide to change a fraction to a decimal. So there's two things that might happen when you do that division. You might get a terminating decimal once you do that division. So what is a terminating decimal? A terminating decimal is just a decimal that ends. So I do the division and I get a decimal that stops. It might fill up the whole screen of your calculator, but at some point it stops. So if I divide 1 by 2 on my calculator, I'm going to get 0.5. That's a terminating decimal. It stopped. And you can think of the word terminating, it kind of sounds like a bus terminal, if you've ever heard that, which is a bus stop. Or you can think of the Terminator, who's a guy who goes around and kills people, and he's ending their lives. So he's stopping them from living. So again, terminate means to stop. The other thing that might happen when we do this division is we might get a repeating decimal. And a repeating decimal is, again, kind of just what it sounds like. It's a decimal that has one digit or possibly a group of digits that repeat forever. If I divide 1 by 3, I'm going to get 0.333333, and the 3 just keeps on going forever. If you actually do a long division of that, you will see that that's a pattern that is never going to stop. That's a repeating decimal. Or you might get 2 digits that repeat, like 0.14141414. And in that case, again, it's a repeating decimal because those digits are going to repeat forever and ever. So let's see what this looks like when we actually do this division. Let's say I want to find the batting average of a hitter with 39 hits in 85 times at bats. So that's the same as 39 over 85. And when I do batting average, I actually take the number of hits divided by the number of times at bat, and then round that to the nearest thousandth, or the third place after the decimal point. So how am I going to do this? Well, I'm actually going to use my calculator. And I'm going to do 39 divided by 85 and see what I get. Now, wow, look at that giant thing. Is that terminating? Is it repeating? I can see here that I have 4, 5, 8, 8, 2, 3, 2, let's see. Is there anything here that's repeating? Well, it looks like after the 4, see how this goes 5, 8, 8, 2, 3, 5, 2, 9, 4, 1, 1, 7, 4, 6, 7, and that's the same as everything but the 4. So it looks like that whole thing there is repeating. That's crazy. Well, when we do batting average, remember we said we're going to round to the nearest thousandth. So I am going to look at 4, 5, 8. I'm going to round to this place, so I look at the 8 right after that, which tells me to round up. So this batting average is going to be 0.459. So when I come back to here, I'm going to write that as 0.459. I can also take this decimal, 1 and 42 hundredths, and write that as a mixed number in simplest form. I know that normally when we look at this, we would probably just say 1.42. But if I want to change a decimal to a fraction, the easiest way to do that is to say it with the place value name. So I'm going to write this as 1 and what I just said, 42 hundredths. So 42 hundredths. So that has now been written as a mixed number. I have the whole number part and I have the fraction part, but it's not in simplest form. I would look for the greatest common factor. I can divide both of these, the numerator or top number and the denominator or bottom number, by 2, and I'm going to get still my whole number 1, and then 42 divided by 2 is 21, and 100 divided by 2 is 50. So I'm going to get 1 and 21 50ths, and that's in lowest terms. Here are your free response and multiple choice questions, so you should pause the video now.